Hey guys, Michael here, the Homemade Genius, here with another video for you today. As promised, I will be delivering another knife video. This is a knife build, slightly different than ones I've done in the past. As I mentioned before in one of my previous videos, I've done a A to B or blank to blade video in the past where I walked through the processes I used to build a knife. It was about 30 minutes long and I really had to edit it down to get it to fit in that amount of time. I'm not really into doing hour-long videos, and I don't like drawing them out, if at all possible. What ended up happening was everything I edited out, you guys had questions about. I keep getting requests to make more knife build videos. I also get a lot more requests to get detail into these videos, which I'm okay with. I'm really okay with. I like that. I like that you want more, and it really makes me feel good that you trust me enough to give you more. Couple of things I want to throw into this video. Number one, let me tell you a little bit about the layout. I'm going to be taking another blank to blade approach on knife building. I've got a blank right here, and this is a current project that I'm working on. This is not for a client. This is something that I'm building that I want to just see how it turns out, and as I said in a previous video, I'll probably end up putting this one up for sale. However, if I'm going to do a good blank to blade video for you guys, A to Z, I think it's probably a better idea that I start directly from the beginning. Okay guys, I want to reiterate one more time. I'm not a professional knife builder. I'm a guy that found this as a hobby. I love it. I think it's great. I've been reached out to on more than one occasion to build knives for people, and I can't tell you how humbled I am that you guys have trusted me to do that. With that being said, I told you before I was going to start with this other blank right here, but we're going to move this off to the side. I'm going to build that knife, and it's going to come out nice, and I'm going to do a lot of neat stuff to it, and I'll show it to you when it's all done. But this video is about taking you along for the ride from the beginning to the end. So in order to do that, we need to start at the beginning, the design phase. So this first video is going to be dedicated towards coming up with the design. I'm going to show you what I do. I'm not going to tell you that it's the right way. I'm going to tell you the way that works for me. I think with anything in life, you need to figure out, you need to learn the foundation of what you're doing. You need to understand the process, and you need to understand what's going on, and then you need to make it your own. I don't care if you're talking about rebuilding a car, remodeling a room, or performing brain surgery. At the end of the day, you need to accomplish a certain task. And how you get from point A to point B, as long as you stick within the guidelines and the rules, it's up to you. The hardest part about any knife build is getting started, and that is coming up with a design. I'm going to show you a design that I have right here that was provided to me by someone who's asked me to build them a knife. I'm not going to take credit for this design. This is something that he's come up with on his own, and he'd like me to build it. I took a look at the design. I liked it. I thought it was really nice. There's a few things on it I would probably do different if I was going to make this my knife or a knife that I wanted to produce. I'm not going to take this man's knife and build this knife for him and then turn around and make 45 copies and try to sell them. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that, which kind of brings me to the first point of designing a knife. There's a lot of debate and a lot of talk that goes around about copying other people's knives, and whether it's the right thing to do, whether it's ethical, whether you can do it, and just there are people that are on both sides of that fence, and they are just sitting there armed to the teeth, and they're not going to waver in how they feel. And then there's other people. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with taking someone's design and copying that design. I don't think it's offensive. I don't think it's insulting. I don't think it's degrading. I think it's actually flattering. If I came up with a knife design and I published it out there and said, hey guys, this is a knife that I did, what do you think of it? And 10 people said, hey, I saw your knife, I thought it was awesome, I tried to make it, and here's what I did. I'd be pretty flattered. I think where the line gets crossed is if you're creating a knife, let's say you're making a Thomas Rucker style knife, or a Adventure Sworn style knife, or a Ray Mears knife, and you go out there and you try to copy the knife exactly the way they do it, and then you try to pass it off as one of those knives, as a forgery. Whether you're telling people, hey guys, look, I bought this, Adventure Sworn knife, or hey guys, look, I got this Ray Mears knife, and you're telling them that it's one of those knives. Worse off is that you're going to try to sell that knife and as a Ray Mears or one of those other big brands that you come up with. That's where it gets dicey. That's where I think you've crossed a line. Having said that, I've got a nice design here. The customer wants this design, which makes it even better. I know that if I can replicate what he's got here on paper, I think he's going to be happy. First thing you need to have is an idea. Go out there, look at some pictures, look at some styles. I got news for you. I hate to break it to you, but chances are you're not going to come up with an original. Everything has been done to a degree. Shaving a 1/4 inch off here, dropping the point a little bit further here, swooping this, changing that, using this. Everything has been done to some degree. It's only what flavor of the style are you putting on it? What's your spin? What's your take? What's it going to make it unique for you? This knife is a fairly common style, bushcraft style knife. I've seen a lot of different flavors of this knife. I like what this gentleman's done here. Again, you go to personal preferences, you go to taste, you go to all kinds of different uniquenesses that makes the knife special for you. So, without further ado, this is the knife. He's put it on graph paper, and I've printed it out through the printer. This is not graph paper. Ideally, when I start out with a design, I start out just sketching on a piece of paper, notebook paper, loose leaf paper, whatever I have, and come up with an overall style. Then I decide, how do I want that knife to look? How do I want it to feel in my hand? Do I want a little bit of a longer handle or a shorter handle? Whatever. This individual has come up with a pretty nice knife, and he's gone so far as to give me the dimensions, and I think that's great. I really appreciate it. And what he's got here is this. He's showing me an overall length, looks like 9 1/4 inches. He looks like he wants a 4 3/4 inch handle, a 4 1/4 inch blade. That gives me 9 inches, so I'm assuming he wants about a 1/4 inch ricasso right here. He looks like he's got 2 pins. Looks like he drew a lanyard hole when he took it out. Let me look at the specs here. I'm going to try to read this upside down, so forgive me. He's looking for either 1095 or 01 high carbon steel. As far as wood, he wants tiger maple or curly maple. Those are a couple of good choices. He wants brass pins. No argument there. I like that idea. He wants a high Scandi grind, and the Scandi grind he's marked it out right here about what he's looking for as far as a high grind is concerned. He wants a 1/8 inch blade. He wants a 1/8 inch thickness on the blade. So really, it's a typical bushcraft style knife that you're going to run into. What makes this unique is this is the individual's take on it. He's got his own flavor. Now, it doesn't seem like a big deal, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but even stuff like the drops and the angles and the curves and the swoops, all those are unique to the individual, and those are the things that make this knife his. Once you've got your sketch down, it's important to take that sketch and you've got your dimensions and transfer that over to graph paper. When I do this, ideally I like to try to have this as exact as I possibly can. This is my theme when I pretty much do anything in life. Every step of the process, I try to pretend it's the very last step, and I try to make it perfect. I try to pretend that I'm doing it for a client, and they're going to see this, and this is the end result. It may seem like a lot of extra work, and it's not really, but what ends up happening is you're never going to achieve perfection. But if I've seen so many people go through a process and say, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it later, I'll fix it at the end, I'll caulk this, I'll cover it with paint, I'll put a plant in front of it. Well, at the end of the day, you may have a good looking product, but the second somebody walks up to it and starts examining it, all the flaws will show up. If you strive for perfection throughout every step of the process, even if you fall short a little bit at every step, at the end, you're going to be satisfied with your results. I'm not going to tell you that that's the right approach. It's always been my approach. It has served me well so far. To each his own. You may be somebody who can fudge it along the way and still achieve a perfect result at the end. I just can't do it that way, and kudos to people who can. I'm going to take the overall dimensions of this knife and I'm going to transfer it to graph paper that I know is going to measure out. I may take this ruler and I may measure it, and it may come out absolutely perfectly to the square inch. I don't trust it. It came out off of a printer, and it goes back to what I said just a minute ago. Strive for perfection at every phase of the process, and that it will come out better in the end. So I'm going to take his wish list and I'm going to put it here. Okay, guys, so what we're looking at is an overall length of 9 1/2 inches. So I'm going to start out by making this project 9 1/2 inches. I want to keep it exact measurement. This is going to be my starting point right here. Exact measurement. I want to use the lines of the graph paper. We're looking at 9.5 inches. I'm sorry, 9.25 inches. And that takes me to right about here. And my overall length, 9.25 inches. We're looking at 1.25 inches. The profile, 1.25 inches takes me right here. 1.25 inches takes me right there. And let us connect the dots. Okay. What that is like he's got it right here. Draw your box, get your overall dimensions out, and then go in and start marking where all the points are going to be. Now he wants a 4 3/4 inch handle. So let's start over here and let's give him a 4 3/4 inch handle. So that's where the handle is. So in order to get him a 4 1/4 inch blade, we got to go right here, and I'm going to have to make the assumption that he is looking for a 4 1/4 inch cutting blade. So we have a 1/4 inch ricasso. We have the handle at 4 3/4 inches, and we have the cutting edge at 4 1/4 inches. So all these areas are marked out, and now I can go in and do what I want. I can make this handle any way I wanted to. If I wasn't going off someone else's design, I could draw however I want this to look right here, and take the same thing with the blade. And I know that if I'm working in these parameters, I got that 4 3/4 inch handle. If I work in these parameters, I know I got that 4 1/4 inch blade. So let's do that. Let me find the center mark here before I go any further. We've got an 1.25 inches. Okay, so we're looking at a center line right here. So I'm going to draw the center line. Now the reason I'm doing a center line on the knife blade is because I want to keep things as symmetrical as I possibly can. So I'm going to draw me a little center line right here. And I'm going to use that to indicate where I want my pins. Or at least I'm going to use that to help me orient later. Alright guys, well I think that's going to be pretty close to what the client is looking for. I can't, that's exactly what he's looking for right here. Alright, so having said that, just for artsy fartsy, let's go ahead and put in the high Scandi. You know what, guys? I'm very much into the woodland theme. Horse, wolf, bear especially. I did the Wolverine recently, a hunting knife called the Wolverine, and it was not named after the comic character Wolverine. But I also did the knife right after that, the Siva Long Hunter, because I'm very much into the 18th century long hunter lifestyle. I think that's really just fascinating. I love watching that. Dave Canterbury does some amazing videos regarding Long Hunter series and 18th century living, as well as a couple of his Pathfinder affiliates. They do fantastic videos. The bottom line is we need a name for this knife, and that cat just scared the snot out of me. You almost lost it. You almost bit it. I'm not kidding you. This is what I got to work with. This is what I got to work with. You're going to burn yourself in that flame. Get out of here. Okay. So while this video series is being produced, guys, I challenge you, come up with a neat name for this. Who knows, maybe I'll come up with some kind of a cool giveaway for it. So start thinking. Last thing I want to put on here, guys, are the marks for the pins. And it's not too terribly important to get the sizing right on this, simply because It's not too terribly important to get the sizing right on this, simply because it's just reference. Again, we have options for pins that we don't necessarily need to be using, this perfect measurement in here. Some pins are a little bit bigger than others, and I think I'm going to put this one right about here. I want to give it room. I want to do some decoration up in the front, and this is over with. All right there. Okay, guys. I need to call the client back. Looks like he erased a lanyard hole. Let me double check. 1095 Tiger Maple brass pins, high Scandi, 1/8 inch thick. I need to validate whether or not he wants a lanyard hole in there, and if he does want a lanyard hole, bad part about this, guys, is you could spend all night long designing this knife. You can spend forever and a day going through, moving this, adjusting that, changing this, and really at the end of the day, you're the one that's going to be living with this knife. So make it right, make it perfect, make it everything you want it to be when you're done. Because once you start cutting and grinding into steel, especially if you use some of this expensive stuff, you want to be sure that it's right. I take a knife and I'll take it from here, and we'll do a template next, and I'll show you how I do the template. But I'll take a template and I'll go from here to cardboard, and from cardboard to hardwood. To hardboard, and I'll show you that it's about 1/4 inch thick, and it'll give me a permanent template. An advantage of that is also you get to hold it in your hand. You're holding something that's 1/4 inch thick, and you kind of get a feel. I can feel what this knife is going to feel like when it's done. That's the advantage. That's the advantage of going from a sketch to a detailed drawing or a blueprint, and taking that blueprint and creating a template from it, and then taking that template and making something more permanent like a mock-up. You don't have to do that with every single knife, but it is something that you can do. I don't necessarily have to do it with this particular knife. The only reason I wouldn't do it is because this is a client knife, and the client wants this knife and he wants this style, and at the end of the day he's going to get his style knife. I come over here sometimes and I'll do some detailed, I'm not an artist, but I try to do some shading and shadowing and try to get an understanding of what this is going to be like when I transfer it over into 3D, the real world, and I start grinding it out. I know that if I put a shadow line over here, I got an idea of what it's going to look like. If I come over here and do some lines and get an idea of, okay, I want it to kind of bevel right here. Just all kinds of shapes and all kinds of designs. It helps you visualize what the final product's going to look like if you just take some time and add some artistic flair to it. You're not creating an art project, you're not going to get graded on it, but it's going to help you visualize it. Sometimes when you draw something on paper, it looks fantastic. You think, oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the world. But then when you start adding the details and putting it in, putting shading to it, and realize it might not be exactly what I'm looking for. Maybe if I change this a little bit, or if I move that a little bit, it'll come out differently. That's exactly what happened on my last knife. I did the Siva Long Hunter. I drew the knife out, and I had the handle scales had a little bit of a different design to it, and I kept looking at it on paper. It looked good, and then I started shadowing it and shading it and looking at it and thinking about it, and the more detail I put into it, the more realistic it became, and the more realistic it became, the more I was able to visualize it clearer in my head. And then I realized it just looks good on paper. It's not going to translate well into the real world. So anyway, guys, that's pretty much it. This video covered quite a bit, and as far as the design is concerned, and as far as what rules would I follow if I'm designing a knife. The rules I would follow are this. Do what's in your head. Do what you want. Anyway, guys, I'm not going to go off on another tangent here. I'm just going to touch up this picture a little bit more, try to get a better understanding of what the client's looking for and what I'm going to try and produce for them with the scale drawing. That's about it for this episode. Again, don't forget to subscribe so you can get the rest in this series. We got a lot more stuff to cover, and I hope you come along for the ride with me. Thanks a lot. Salute. Genius out. He wants to land your hole in his butthole. Hey!